Hi, I'm Kevin Koym. This is the Venture Outfitter Weekly. Part of what we're here to do today is work with open up topics for supporting startups and scale-ups around the world to take advantage of opportunities that can enhance what they're up to. Today's sponsor is the state of Chihuahua. We have a special relationship with the state of Chihuahua. Tech Ranch has been doing work with them for about the last 3 years. And part of the way that we work is we build venture bridges. That is, the whole idea of a bridge is you have to have a firm base on both sides, and you want to have trade that goes back and forth. Now, for today's topic, there's a very special way that we want to think about this, though, is I've been, as some of you might know, 3 weeks ago, I was in Europe. And part of the activities that are happening is landing companies, in this case from Bosnia-Herzegovina, into the Austin area. But many times the opportunities are not just from, say, Europe to Texas. Sometimes taking advantage of the power and the activity of the business in northern Mexico is quite interesting. There are three main states we've worked with in northern Mexico: state of Nuevo León, the state of Chihuahua, and the state of Coahuila. Now, specifically, what's interesting about the state of Chihuahua is out of all the 32 regions, or 32, there's like 31 states plus the federal district around Mexico City. So I'd say 32 states of Mexico. The state of Chihuahua does the most trade with the United States. And so part of what we're going to be talking about today is how can we leverage free trade zones for cross-border business and growth. The whole idea is, whether you're a startup, a scale-up, or a larger company that's looking to move and connect to this region for enhancing your business, it's a really important time to be paying attention to these concepts. Part of what we'll be doing is we're going to talk about this because borders are shifting. Obviously, this is kind of a play on words, because, Texas and Mexico are still connected. I've been doing business in Mexico since 1992 and working for myself and doing activities in Mexico since 1994. And so it's an interesting time. The physical borders didn't move, but there's a lot of trade that's changing. And part of the thing that we want to do is make sure that we're aware of this. Now, in my case, I've discovered business in Mexico for myself, all the way back to 1994. And it's really enhanced, especially during the good times and the bad times. It's enhanced opportunities that wouldn't have been there for me if I didn't have these cross-border relationships. And I'm not just talking about with regards to Mexico, but also with regards to other places in the world. The Texas-Mexico relationship, though, is particularly a special one because of just the sheer amount of trade that happens between Texas and Mexico. And so part of what we'll do is we're going to be talking to two experts about this. One of them is Fernando Alba, the Undersecretary of Economy for Chihuahua, Mexico. I've had the honor of working with over the last 3 years in a bunch of different roles. He has a business background, got involved in the state of Chihuahua's, in the Secretary of Economy and Innovation and Economy in the state, and brought his industrial knowledge into that role. And then Ben Ramirez, who I've known for it must be at least 20 plus years, all the way back to when Ben was at the city of Austin in economic development. And Ben won't necessarily tell you all the details of the impressive stuff that he's done, but one of the things, as an example, that he's helped is when Tesla was moving to Austin, Ben was part of the team that helped bring Tesla to Austin and take advantage of some of the free trade zone ideas that we're going to be talking about. What I'm going to do, though, is I'd like to go ahead and get out of the way. We're going to have a question and answer process. But let's do this. I'm going to take the slides off and we'll go ahead and have the three of us on screen. Why don't I do this? Ben, would you like to do a better introduction than what I did of yourself, a little bit about your background, and then we'll have the same from Fernando.
Yeah, absolutely. Kevin, thank you so much for the invitation to be here today and talk about foreign trade zones. Well, yeah, working in economic development from the state of Michigan originally and then down here into Texas. This Austin region I've seen grow since 2002 in particular. And, everything that's happened here as more manufacturing has been taking place here in the Austin area than Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, for instance. A lot of that's advanced manufacturing. So, of course, we're seeing a lot of interest from companies from around the world to invest in our region and have access to the market in Mexico and further on Latin and South America. So that's really been the impetus of a lot of the investment in the area. As you mentioned earlier, the importance of trade with Mexico. It's always been a top market for our companies to export into Mexico. Usually it was in the top 10 for just a short period of time, but then Mexico popped back into the top 5 markets for us. And, we'll talk a little bit about the USMCA, the U.S., Canada, Mexico trade agreements, the new NAFTA, right? And all the things that we've seen from companies wanting to invest here because of the proximity to Mexico, but also that cultural and traditional business focus exchanges on the cross border. So really impressed with everything that Tech Ranch has been doing and collaborating and making these bridges, beyond theory and into experience for companies.
Thank you, Ben. Fernando, if you would introduce yourself and then kind of give us your opening thoughts about the trade between the trade zone and this Austin Chihuahua corridor that's emerging as a strategic opportunity for cross-border growth.
Yes, thank you, Kevin. Thank you for your kind introduction. Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here with us, Ben. Yeah, once again, my name is Fernando Alba, Undersecretary for Industry, Mining, and Energy here in the state of Chihuahua. I've been in this position for the last 4 years. What can I say? I mean, the state of Chihuahua has been the leader export of Mexico for the last 15 years. Sorry, it's among the first or second place in either employment in the manufacturing sector in Mexico, and the number 2 also for the number of manufacturing companies located in the whole country. We've been receiving, we are between the 3rd and the 5th state in the country to receive foreign direct investment. And yearly, we receive between $2,000 to $2,500 billion of foreign direct investment, mostly from the U.S., around 70% from the U.S. Over the last 3 years or so, we've been seeing a huge growth from investment coming directly from Taiwan. And our main sectors are basically, number 1 is automotive, that employs around 180,000 people right now. The second is electronics and electronics equipment, computer servers, which is about 120,000 people. We have aerospace and medical devices. So these are the 3 main sectors that are driving the economy of the state. We've been seeing continuous growth between 3 to 5% of GDP for the last 3 to 5 years. And what can I say? And I will conclude by saying that over the last 2 or 3 years, let's say the connection between Texas and Chihuahua has been growing. Obviously, the state of Chihuahua is the number 1 partner for the U.S., and especially Texas. And over the last 3 years, as I was saying, that we have seen a huge growth in investment in the servers and computer equipment. The cluster that is here located the Taiwanese cluster located here in Chihuahua is also making investment in the state of Texas. And we are creating a quite interesting ecosystem between Arizona, Texas, and Chihuahua. So we are making servers and computers for Arizona and for Texas, for companies like Lucid, like Rivian. We are buying servers for TSMC that we are assembling in our servers, the GB200s, the Blackwell system that are being shipped to Dell, to HP, to Meta, Amazon, and some other companies in the U.S. So right now, this is driving not just the growth of the state, but overall, this year, computer equipment has been the main export from the Mexico to the U.S., overcoming automotive, which used to be the number 1 for the last 10 or 15 years or so. So I guess at this point, that is what I would like to mention. I guess I have some opportunity to share more insights on the things that we are seeing on this side of the border. So thank you, Kevin.
Yeah, for everyone that might be listening in Central Texas, one of the things I'd like to localize and then ask Fernando some more questions about is this tie from Taiwan into Chihuahua into Texas. One of the things that he mentioned briefly, but I'd like to even focus a little bit more on is like NVIDIA chips are being assembled into Dell servers and Ciudad Juarez in Chihuahua, and then come straight to the Dell here locally. Can you give us any more color or insight about this whole connection? Because especially from the standpoint of, why is it that like the story that I want everyone to see is everyone sees these connections into Austin, but this Texas, Mexico, Chihuahua, Texas, Taiwan connection. Could you say a little bit more about that?
Yes, for sure. Well, we've been having. I mean, the first as I was saying before, we have in Mexico a program. I'm not sure everyone is familiar with this program that has been that started hitting in the state of Chihuahua 50 years ago, and it's called the IMEX program. Basically, the IMEX program is a special fiscal treatment for companies investing in Mexico that are assembling products and then shipping back either basically to the U.S. That's how it started 50 years ago. This program over the year translated into the first U.S. trade agreement between Mexico, Canada, and the U.S. And then it was renewed in around 2018, 2019 by President Trump. And right now is the USMCA. Right now, has been, let's say, over the last 50 years, has been the main driver for Mexico to position itself as the #1 trading partner with the U.S. So on this background, foreign direct investment into our state has been growing steadily over the last 50 years or so. And around 25 years, we saw an interest from Taiwanese companies coming to, particularly to Ciudad Juarez, that started assembling small electronic products like radios or electronic equipment, TVs, or I don't know, small electronic equipment on all shapes and sizes. Little by little, we were seeing the growth of the, let's say, of the semiconductor industry for the last, I would say, around 10 years or so. As we all know, the GPU growth on the AI industry, in the AI right now, the growth of the AI industry has been growing just so much. NVIDIA driving this growth, TSMC driving this growth, and TSMC and NVIDIA, TSMC being a Taiwanese company assembling the chips in Taiwan, they needed partners here in our country to assemble some of the computers and servers that were required in the U.S. This process started around 7 years ago. As we all know, the CHIPS Act in the Chips and Manufacturing Act started with President Biden around 5-6 years or so, improve or give a huge benefit for companies investing in chips in fabs in the U.S. So TSMC started their production in Arizona, Samsung and some other companies in Austin. So we started to saw this growth in both states, Arizona and Texas. At the same time, we started to see a huge growth of investment in the last 3 years, 4 years, over $3 billion directly from Taiwanese companies that coming from the Taiwanese ecosystem, which is TSMC, which is Amkor, which is a huge ATP company also coming from Taiwan. And the local companies like Foxconn and Inventec and Wistron and Pegatron and WeWin, they already had a foot here in Mexico, here in Ciudad Juarez, from several years ago. So they started receiving, let's say, the orders to assemble the servers and the computers with the latest 2-nanometer chips coming directly from TSMC. So the process was TSMC produced their chips in Taiwan. Those chips were shipped here to Ciudad Juarez. Our state is the #1 importer of ICs, integrated components, into Mexico. Yearly, we export $75 billion to the U.S. Out of that, 50% is coming, more than 50% is coming from chips and integrated circuits. So the story goes that little by little, as the AI revolution started to grow in the U.S., here the companies started investing in new facilities, in new talent development, to let's say, to make space to the requirements coming from Meta, from Amazon, from Apple, from Amazon, all U.S. companies requiring data centers or requiring generative AI. So right now, what is happening is that here in our state, in our city, we're assembling the huge servers, the latest Blackwell servers, the latest GB200 servers that are assembled and then shipped either to Dell, to HP, and to some other companies in the US. At the same time, what we are seeing right now is that these same companies are also making investments in Texas. Wistron, Pegatron, Foxconn, all of them are increasing their footprint in the state of Texas, because what we are seeing right now is that we are creating a little bit of the like the automotive ecosystem between Michigan and Mexico that have, let's say, twin plants in both sides of the country. Is little by little we are creating this ecosystem where Taiwanese companies are making investments in the US, already making investment into Mexico. They are continuing to invest here in Mexico. So we are seeing a very, I would say, a very positive process of investment in the US and into Mexico. I mean, we are not competing to each other. We are basically creating a huge ecosystem where right now we are already receiving chips from TSMC here, from Arizona here into Chihuahua. And then we are shipping, also receiving some other integrated components from some other chip companies like Broadcom or ARM or some others that are assembling into this product, and then are shipped back once again to the US. So this is quite nice to see that Austin, Arizona, and Chihuahua are connected. And I would like to say that this is the only ecosystem in the whole world that is working like this. Right now, due to the TSMCA, all chips and semiconductors are coming with zero tariffs into Mexico, which is quite different to what is happening with Taiwan, with China, with Malaysia, with Vietnam, and the rest of the world, which every country has a tariff, a baseline tariff of 15%. So right now, Mexico has basically zero tariff for goods coming into our state. We are transforming some of those products. We are shipping some of those products to the US, then we're receiving back, then we are shipping back. I mean, that's the way the commerce between US and Mexico works. And then at the end of the day, everyone is adding a little bit of, value added to the products, right? So it's just so nice to see that we are that we are seeing the growth in Texas, the growth in Arizona, the growth in Chihuahua is growing organically from this AI revolution that is growing just so much. So I don't know, maybe I say just so many words in a few minutes.
Yeah, no, I get it. Well,
maybe you are better than myself or Ben to go deeper into the things that I'm saying. The only message I want to say is that we are not competing. We are complementing each other. We are seeing the coming and going from engineers from Tesla, from NVIDIA, from Apple, from Dell, from HP, coming into Juarez, going back to Texas, going back to Arizona, going back to San Francisco. So we are creating this quite positive ecosystem. And that's why we believe that free trade is so great, because it benefits everyone in the process.
Yeah, beautiful. Let's hear from Ben, because Ben, you're part of the reason of why a lot of this is actually landing in Williamson County. And for all the people that do not know, Austin is in a county called Travis County, but a little bit farther, just like right north of Travis County is Williamson County. You've been responsible for a lot of things that are actually happening there. You might wrap in what's the other side of the story that Fernando was just saying, and wrap in how free trade zones are actually helping drive some of this.
Yeah, so one of my clients for Kochitari Global, the client is the Foreign Trade Zone of Central Texas, and that incorporates the entire 5-county metro region, plus some area that's eligible up even further north into counties like Bell County, for instance. And so this whole area has been really growing tremendously as far as company investments here, from the semiconductor industry that Fernando was mentioning, and how connected we are with Mexico and Chihuahua in particular, but also the automotive sector and everything that Chihuahua has done in that ecosystem as well. So we see a lot of this cross-border collaboration because of the old NAFTA and IMEX, as well as the new USMCA. And we're actually encouraging these companies to look at our region for nearshoring opportunities. And so it's actually happening. We've talked about the importance of enabling companies to invest in Mexico and Chihuahua, as well as Texas, and leverage the workforce that we have in both countries and enable us to tap into productivity levels that make us more efficient to compete so that our companies in Chihuahua and Texas can compete globally. And so it's really a phenomenal opportunity for companies that want to access growing Mexican markets to invest here in Texas. And as Fernando was mentioning, goods are shipped cross-border and add value in both countries back and forth. It's really a tremendous time. And I know that the impetus of this has been the new tariff structures that have been put in place by the Trump administration, these last few months now, that have really generated more interest from countries like Taiwan, as Fernando was mentioning, to move production into the USMCA area.
That's beautiful. Let's talk about a question to both of you guys that would be great to hear. Are there any specific companies that you'd like to highlight? This specific company that leveraged free trade zones to specifically enhance their capability, especially in the frame, also alongside with the tariffs. Like any specifics? I know a lot of both of you guys have. You're not able to always talk about some of the things because of non-disclosure agreements, but maybe you could throw us a bone, kind of give us an idea of one company to kind of wrap our minds around.
Well, I guess for everyone, I mean, it's not a secret, right? But personally speaking, the way the semiconductor industry works is that you have a open source fab company like TSMC, right? That is basically this assembling the chips designed by someone else, third party. NVIDIA has been the GPUs designed by them are the leaders right now in the industry, but they just design, they don't manufacture. So NVIDIA sells the order to SMC, but they need someone to assemble the chips into the server because neither NVIDIA or TSMC are manufacturing companies. So this process started, I mean, around 20 years ago between Apple and Foxconn, where Apple needed someone to manufacture their iPhones, and they found that Foxconn could provide those manufacturer capabilities. So that knowledge started to grow for the last 20 years or so. The rest on the industry follow up on finding out companies big enough, capable enough to manufacture these latest, configuration for semiconductor products. Computers, we've been assembling computers here in our state for the last 20 years or so, but they did not require the latest grade of technological advancements that we are seeing today. So my feeling is that everything started to grow organically in the U.S., Taiwan, and Mexico. They found here that they have partners that were prepared to receive these orders. Obviously, let's say reconfiguring their sites. If you go to those facilities, you will see everything is mechanized, really. And you see, huge buildings just with automated processes, basically assembling the boards, assembling the PCBA, endless lines of assemblies. Basically, everything is automated. So I will say that Foxconn started their operations here in Mexico, in Chihuahua, Juárez, particularly in Juárez, around 20 years ago. They are the partners or some of the companies that I mentioned before. And with them, it started to grow the Taiwanese ecosystem that I just mentioned before. They call themselves like the five sisters or five brothers. And out of there are actually seven. The family has been growing over the years. Yeah, but right now, it started with one. Right now we have six. We just received a new information that one of the large ones is also coming here to Ciudad Juarez. So, so at the end of the day, I see these like three pieces that are, how to say, working together, assembling together like a kind of a puzzle that is little by little finding a place. On one side, the innovation is being created in the US by the engineers of NVIDIA. Then you will have this huge growth from TSMC in Arizona that will be assembling the 2 nanometer chips that will be the leaders as they are right now, but they will ship here from Arizona. And at the same time, they are finding, they are finding capable partners that are able to obtain the level of excellence in manufacturing that can complement what they are doing in the design and on the manufacturing on the chip. So at the end of the day, we have this very interesting partnership that has been growing steadily over the years. But the nice part of this is that maybe Ben can help me on this one, but what we saw on the automotive sector that took around 30, 40 years to grow, right now it's been growing just so fast in the last 3 to 5 years. And we are just at the beginning of the process. So my feeling is some more chips are coming into place, like Google TPUs or Amazon or Apple that are designing their own chips. We will also see those manufacturing processes will be run here from Mexico, from some of those companies. Will be working with the U.S. partners. At the end of the day, I mean, we are creating between Canada, Mexico, and the U.S., but especially in this sector between U.S. and Mexico, a partnership that has been really formidable in facing China competition. China has been growing just so much in the AI and in the industry, trying to make their own servers a little bit behind what is happening in the US. But at the end of the day, China can manufacture and can assemble at the same time. And the US, my feeling is, they need a partner on which they can rely on to manufacturing their computer, their equipment, and let's say continue with this incredible partnership that has been growing for the last 50 years between US and Mexico, right? So
that's definitely something that I could actually speak about too. That I want to make sure that and it's interesting right now in our studio audience we have Texans, Mexicans, Koreans, all the way to Germans. So spanning the world with even just the people that are even more that'll see it on YouTube at a later point. But it's interesting to see kind of that confection across all these different areas about taking advantage of this area as the U.S. positions, and both presidents Trump and Biden have positioned U.S. vis-a-vis against China. And part of the thing about it is as we look at what that might actually really incorporate, what Fernando's saying about we could take all of Mexico and all the rest of Latin America and still have extra need and capacity required for really taking on the target that's been spoken about. And I can see your part in this has been really putting together the pieces of the free trade zones that are enabling the regional connectivity that Fernando's talking about. Can you give us, another point of view about what else, as our viewers are actually thinking about, how do they take advantage of this? How do they step into the opportunity represented?
Yeah, talking to a lot of companies in Central Texas, they always ask, how can I avoid or find shelter on these increases in tariffs costs that were unexpected for a lot of them? Traditionally, the import duties that a company has to pay is an average of 6%. And, over the years, companies said, well, maybe it might increase up to 10%, but we can absorb those costs, right? We have no problem. But once you start talking about an increase to 50% on duties or 120%, it's really difficult for a company to absorb those types of costs. And so they really generated a lot of interest in the free foreign trade zone here, we call it, in the U.S. And unfortunately, I was encouraging a lot of companies for many years from 2007 forward to, look at the foreign trade zone program, and these importers waited too long. So there's a whole process to get your site activated by U.S. Customs to utilize the foreign trade zone benefits of delaying having to pay the import duties. And then if it's a product that ends up in the U.S. market, they have to pay those import duties at that point in time. But if they're shipped out of the U.S., then they can waive the import duties entirely. So it's a really great benefit for these companies. But now with the backlog of all the companies throughout the U.S. that are applying for this program now, what used to be an 8-month process to get your site activated by U.S. Customs is looking at least 12 months to get activated. And that was before the government shutdown, which, increased the backlog for the companies that have applied and have been in the process now for the last several months just here locally. But the good news is, there's a lot of other programs that exist in the U.S., from duty drawback to other platforms that can alleviate some of these cost issues that a company has been facing now for the past, since April 2nd, basically.
Interesting. So let's hop around a little bit. What I'm going to do is, for anyone that's in the studio audience, some of you guys have actually already made some comments and stuff like that. I'm going to just read a couple of them. Jay Lee from Korea, shout out to Jay. He said a good read about chips. He shared the book Chips War. If you haven't read that, it's actually a really interesting take, and it kind of puts context around that. Justin says, as a former contract manufacturer in the electronics industry in Juarez, this is incredibly interesting and exciting content. Northern Mexico has so many competitive advantages for the U.S. manufacturing sector. He says Mexico manufacturing is international sport. Yeah, it's interesting. I remember one time in the Bahia region of Mexico, here, walking into this one hotel and hearing Japanese, German, what I don't know how to differentiate Taiwan versus Chinese being spoken. Of course, English and Spanish, that five in just the area of that hotel, like the common area of that hotel. Part of the thing that I'd actually like to ask is, and for our studio audience, if you have questions you want to make sure I get to, go ahead and put them into the chat. What are some of the ways that our viewers, both that are active with us right now in the studio audience and then the ones that see this on YouTube, what are some of the ways of taking advantage of these opportunities? Is there anything, like, where do we start? Like, where would be the right next step for starting if someone was curious about what they might do with regards to engaging either in the state of Chihuahua or one of the free trade zones?
I'll mention a couple of points here. Here in the state of Chihuahua, we have an office of promotion that is responsible basically for making contact or either answering requests from companies from all over the world that want to explore the possibilities of setting foot here in our state. Right now, let's say the marketing drive of Mexico is being done mainly by the states, right? So we have an office that is specialized on working with companies coming here. Now, we have also a huge ecosystem of either developers, accountants, lawyers, fiscal experts, all kinds of, let's say, the intellectual capital required to support a company exploring possibilities here in our state. We, as a state, have, as you well know, a presence in fairs and seminars all over the world, from France to London to San Francisco, Arizona, Taiwan. I just come back from Taiwan, my 5th time in the last 4 years. Also, 3 weeks ago, just came back from Japan. So what we are doing is basically we are sending the message out that our state is open for business. If everyone is interested in exploring these possibilities, you can contact me and we can work together in this process. We have a quite interesting set of fiscal and non-fiscal incentives to companies coming here to Chihuahua. And also, I will say that we are also working closely with the federal government. We are just, maybe you don't know, but I'll say it, around 3 months ago, we just announced, I will say in Spanish, something that is called the Polo de Desarrollo Económico San Jerónimo, which roughly translated is the Free Trade Zone of San Jerónimo, which just is just located just across, I would say, the U.S. border in the state of New Mexico. If you are familiar with our region, El Paso is the last spot of Texas, right, to the south west. And just across El Paso, we have New Mexico. And then in the south, we share borders with New Mexico, and we share border with El Paso. We have 5 border crossings between U.S. and Mexico, 4 ones located between Texas and Chihuahua, and 1 located between New Mexico and Chihuahua. So the border crossing between New Mexico and Chihuahua just received this free, it's not a free trade zone in itself, but it's the closer thing that we have. The federal government is just launched 6 months ago a new program that is offering fiscal incentives for companies setting foot in our country. And they started with a pilot project that started with around 3 zones in the country, one located in Juarez, the other 2 located in the south of Mexico. So ours is the only one located between Baja California and Tamaulipas, the only one in the north of Mexico, right? So what we offering are 100% deduction on asset investments for companies all over the world. We are offering a huge reduction of investment in innovation and talent development, in addition to the incentives offered by the state, fiscal and non-fiscal incentives. So what we are, this zone is around 60 hectares. Will have obviously energy, gas, water, all the resources required to start let's say a company. We'll be ready around the next half of 2026, and we'll conclude with the development of this zone by December 2027. The nice thing about this is that we are working in symmetry with the federal government, and we are working together in this process. And at the end of the day, one of the reasons that this project started when we made the proposals to the president of the country is we said, you look, I mean, we have Arizona 8 hours to the west. We have Austin 8 hours to the east. We are in the middle. We already are the leaders of chips, computer, and service equipment in the country. The semiconductor industry is growing just so much in those both areas. So we need a place where companies come in to help, let's say, or to support or be part of this ecosystem. And if they want to explore possibilities here in Mexico, we can offer them a place with the requirements. Something that I'm seeing when I'm especially in Asia is that on the semiconductor, and maybe Ben will help me on this one, or maybe even Kevin or whoever want to help me on this one, is that there are basically 2 big layers of the semiconductor industry. The big, large companies like TSMC, like Intel, like, Amkor, Skyworks, that are the one driving the growth, but they are investing only in the U.S. They will not come to Mexico. There are some other companies in the process, especially on the ATP process, on the OSAT process, that are also making investment in the U.S. And those will not come to Mexico. But there is a 3rd layer that are the smaller suppliers, thousands of suppliers distributed all over Asia, Vietnam, China, Taiwan, that are having hard time keeping up with the tariffs that they are having shipping directly from those countries to the U.S. So those smaller companies, something very similar to what we are seeing in the automotive industry, that the smallest suppliers are not the big ones, are the ones that started setting foot here in Mexico. We started to see that kind of similar process from the semiconductor industry. Hundreds of companies that are making PCBA, that are making boards, that are making plastics, that are making, all the, I would say, the hundreds of components that are required to assemble a server or a computer screens, controls, electronics, things like that. So that's the way that the ecosystem has been growing. That's why we are offering, let's say, these 2 layers, either the state, we are offering incentives, and also this free trade zone, the San Jeronimo free trade zone that we have here. So anyone is interested in exploring possibilities, please let me know. Director Kevin or myself are more than happy to serve you and to help you with all your questions.
Yeah, let me mention something about that. So Tech Ranch is one of the maintains here in Austin, one of the offices for the state of Chihuahua. So if anyone's listening that's interested and wants to go, typically the things that like the foreign direct investment, bigger deals type of thing for the major type of things. So a lot of those going straight to Fernando is the right way to go. But Tech Ranch is supporting. For those of y'all that are asking questions in the chat, or I got a couple of direct messages to me as well. Tech Ranch does help, especially the earlier stage firms, not necessarily just startups, but also scale-ups. As an example, we've helped Japan-based company that's earlier stage organization. It's a scale-up that's received a lot of venture capital from in Japan. Started coming to Texas, but ended up going to the state of Chihuahua just because of them being able to take advantage of some of the activity. Another thing for earlier stage companies here in Austin, I've got a couple different examples where we've partnered up these earlier stage companies with printed circuit board designers and developers in the city of Chihuahua as well. It's really nice as earlier stage companies to be able to take advantage of Fernando mentioned earlier about automotive, aerospace, and medical device. You have quite a lot of expertise there. In fact, when I was in Chihuahua City, just the sheer scale of the OEMs that are doing aerospace is like you drive for miles and miles and miles around all these different. Honeywell has their largest facility in the world in Chihuahua. It's quite interesting. Honeywell Aerospace has its largest facility in the world there, as an example. Ben, there was a question that came up, and I want you to get to respond to the question that Fernando mentioned, but I'm going to go ahead and ask one other part. Justin asked in the chat, how do U.S. county-based free trade zones support the U.S. economy and create competitive advantage for places like Williamson County? Why don't more counties implement this strategy? If you could respond to the question from Fernando as well as this from Justin, I think that would be great.
Yeah, what we look at for economic development drivers is attracting the big fish, right? So the U.S. government implemented the CHIPS Act to get all these semiconductor, the main drivers of the whole industry and ecosystem here in the U.S. and forcing things like where are chips made that power the drones that we utilize in military operations. So there's many aspects of the push to have control of the technology that's being utilized in many areas, from communications to military operations, etc. And so that's where the CHIPS Act is driving these major investments. And then we've seen through foreign trade zone studies that one was released in July of 2023 of when you have these foreign trade zone facilities like Mercedes and Hyundai in Alabama, and the ecosystem that it generates, the extra investment that's generated in the state of Alabama, but also in the states that are bordered. And so this whole Chihuahua and Texas connection is very important in that area. As far as other counties looking at the opportunities to engage in the foreign trade zone initiative, you have to have a U.S. Customs office nearby. So it's really driven by how close you have. For us, the U.S. Customs office is based out of the airport at Austin, but so we have some counties that are further away from us. As you get further and further out, it's very difficult to establish a foreign trade zone facility outside of U.S. Customs. Driving for 90 minutes drive away from the city limits of Austin to your site. So that's one reason why you don't have too many in far west Texas. And of course, the port of El Paso had a foreign trade zone. It's one of the oldest, as well as Laredo and Houston. So you just have to look at where your region is, and you can contact the office of the governor here in Texas to find out, if you're interested in investing in Texas and you need to have a foreign trade zone, you can contact the governor's office and they can identify locations that make the best sense for you. And then here in Austin, we've got Opportunity Austin that helps with any types of incentives that are available for companies.
Yeah, and perfect. And I'll do a shout out as well. Part of what Tech Ranch does is help build those. Ben, I'm gonna read something from the chat. I want to toss up another question to you. But I'll talk about in Williamson County where Samsung has actually planted its facility. Happens to be where my mom's side of the family's been since 1840. To kind of throw down a little bit of the Texas pride here. But Jay says, from my humble opinion, U.S. maintains partnership with Taiwan and Korea as key nodes, but needs to avoid overconcentration. This is where Mexico can position itself as a trusted, friendly node in a U.S.-aligned semiconductor ecosystem, providing a standardized manufacturing and traceability. I mean, it speaks exactly to what Jay is speaking about. Is this specific thing about how chips have become, even ones that are not being used in military operations, their chips have become so strategic. Like our networks are based on them. There's all sorts of stuff like that. Could you give a little bit more of an example about since Samsung's from Korea, it's landed in Williamson County. You have had a hand in that. Not that you can necessarily talk very much about your fingerprints on that, but what's the connection between Williamson County with activities happening like you're just saying around Samsung into Mexico? Can you give us a little bit more color on that? And I know we're coming towards the end of the time we have together. By the way, since we started just a little bit late, I'm going to go ahead just a few more minutes. But we'll if there's any other questions that anyone else wants to make sure you squeeze in, make sure you put them in the chat. Go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, I mean, well, Samsung, supplies with their operations in Austin area. They supply the logic chips for all the smartphones. So there's so much that's shipped down to Mexico to complete the process, and it's a vital component of what they're doing, right? So you have for the new facility in Taylor, there's going to be even stronger growth and opportunities for Chihuahua companies and the whole relationship with suppliers to the Samsung operations here. We just had a visit yesterday morning by the new Korean ambassador to the United States of America. And she talked about the importance of the relationship, not only in the semiconductor industry, but also the bio-life sciences and investments that the Korean government is committed to the United States in the area of aerospace, as well as the bio-life science industry sector. Of course, semiconductor is in there. And so for Texas, we're competing. We want to be a part of that multiple tens of billions of dollars worth of investment that will be coming here to the U.S. We don't want Texas to be sidelined by any means. And so, we were all making our pitch to be involved in that. So there's going to be a lot of opportunity for collaborations from what's going on in Chihuahua with the server and computer component assembly and the aerospace industry sector, and of course automotive, big time with the Hyundai investments as well. We want to see more cross-border opportunities, and I think we're definitely positioned correctly for that, thanks to a lot of the work that you've already done at Tech Ranch.
Well, thank you. Well, it's interesting. I know that I want to make sure we have a couple other questions, and I'll just. It's made so much sense to me, and thank you for mentioning that, Ben. It's made so much sense for me just because in my personal entrepreneurial journey, part of what happened in my life is I was an Austin-based entrepreneur, had a really advanced way of accessing databases. This is 31 years ago. It had a really advanced way of accessing databases, something that's very common 3 decades later, but was very advanced back then. I was 24 years old, and my first customer was a bank in Guadalajara. And that bank was one of the few banks that weathered the storm at the end of 1994 in the peso crisis. And partially, I'll take credit for it because I think it's true, is because they were able to weather the peso storm because of the IT system that we built for them. There is a huge number of different we have some questions about remote work and video games, and there's also a question of if safety came up. part of what I want to do is I want to make sure for some of those kind of questions where they're more like, really specific, I'm thinking about this, that, and the other thing. I want to make sure I point to the Tech Ranch community for the afterwards. I typically ask our speakers to, for some period of time, to be following the thread on this. There will be a thread for this program that we post into there and that we'll pay attention to. On the remote work question, I think a lot of that, since that's really different than some of the the remote work question that came up in the chat, the thing I'll actually say is there's definitely remote work opportunities. Both I've seen in some of the facilities in this city of Chihuahua. There's the state, and then there's the city of Chihuahua, as well as the Ciudad Juarez, the city of Juarez. The thing to look into are the different organizations: Startup Chihuahua for Chihuahua City and Startup Juarez for that. That's the best place to plug into for those questions. There was a question about safety. I'll tell you that in my own personal case, one of the great things that I like about Chihuahua is I've driven to Chihuahua. I've driven to Chihuahua City. I drove to a city called Casas Grandes. I drove to and have art from a place in the heart of Chihuahua called Mata Ortiz. That's where there's this really famous artist all the way back to 2006. Any part of the world, and I say this as a guy who's traveled to 23 countries over the last 9 years, there's always places you have to be careful, including here in Austin, Texas. And so for the broad strokes about those kind of questions, part of the specific things that you're asking, let's take into the chat session, because I want to make sure I give these two guys a chance to kind of do some wrap-up statements and things like that. I don't know if there's anything specific. Let's see. Justin said, I drove to Creel and highly recommend the canyon. Yeah, there's a really beautiful canyon that's bigger than the Grand Canyon in the United States. And there's a train that goes across that. I have not gotten to go on the train yet, but I have seen the beauty of that canyon. It's quite amazing because you just, you just don't think about it a whole lot. Back to Ben and Fernando. Ben, could you give us some kind of final words about how entrepreneurs should be taking advantage of this, how we can actually take advantage of our adjacency to the state of Chihuahua, as well as free trade zones? Give us just kind of your wrapping thoughts about anything that you might have to say about this.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank you once again for the chance to have this quite interesting discussion. I really need to run for another meeting right now. But I mean, what can I say that I haven't said yet? I mean, right now one of the things that we are doing that is a bit different to what we saw over the last 50 years or so is that right now the knowledge development, the talent development is an element that it wasn't required per se in the first wave of investments from the U.S. or some other parts of the world in some other industries, because it was a low value added, really. I mean, we're manufacturing cables and manufacturing appliances. I mean, things that did not require so much, let's say, knowledge, to put it in a way. But right now, everything is just so quite different. I mean, the level of expertise for our engineers to support the Blackwells and to support the servers and the computers and the Omniverse, the NVIDIA Omniverse, or working with CUDA, which is basically the system, of the chip on any NVIDIA component, let's say, or NVIDIA software. It requires a huge different level of expertise and knowledge. So what we are doing right now is that we're investing in just so much in developing our college grads in AI, in electronics, in microelectronics, in physics, in chemistry. Right now, I was saying before, I just came from Taiwan and I went to visit our students that are basically in an exchange student program with the technical, we received great comments from our teacher. It was a great experience. So what we want to do is we want to integrate our state with the first part of the process on the semiconductor industry, which is the design. I mean, we just have so many people coming out of their colleges with the titles that are fluent in English, that they know math, that they know about programming, that they know about C++, and I mean, just so many requirements that are the basis for the AI revolution. So what we are doing right now is we are working closely with the University of Texas, with University of Arizona. We are working with Taiwan in strengthening those capabilities to have a better integration with the US and with the world. So right now, this is something that we are doing right now. And the second part of the process is, to me, quite natural. I mean, this ecosystem will grow just so much in the next few years that this region will be something quite unique in the whole world. I mean, you are not seeing this kind of development in Europe, anywhere in Europe, either London or Germany or Czechoslovakia or anywhere else, in the Czech Republic, anywhere else in the world. I mean, China will be a huge competitor to the US, that once again, we need to have a partnership on which we can work together, let's say, facing the challenges that we are seeing all over the world. So the way that we are doing it as a country, I guess, we are in the right direction, and we'll continue to. And we'll see what happens in the revision of the USMCA for next year. I expect to see some more changes in intellectual capital, more requirements for the level of integration or regional components. I will see more barriers to products coming to China directly into Mexico and then shipped to the US. So my feeling is that it will be a bit of a challenge, but things eventually will settle. So, and we'll see really a positive, let's say, a result for our countries. What else can I say? I mean, continue working together, having these kind of discussions that are so helpful in trying to either, I mean, hear from you, the experts over there, and just putting forward our vision of the things that are happening. So, I mean, I guess in kind of a nutshell, the things that I saw for the future was, again, thanking you, Ben, and the whole audience for their time, and hopefully we'll have some other opportunity to continue sharing these ideas in the near future.
That sounds great. I look forward to it, Fernando. And Fernando and I will be in Bryan College Station this next week as part of the Why Texas conference. If you want to follow up on some of these activities and meet him and part of the delegation that's going to be together, we will be there as part of Why Texas. If it's just the letter Y, Texas.com. You can also check out techcrunch.com/events, and there'll be information about that if you want to plug in, and it ties into this. Thank you, Fernando. Ben, what are your closing thoughts?
Well, it's an exciting time. As Fernando mentioned, it's really in flux because we're going to see new changes with the USMCA. And the comment period just closed late last month for businesses to give their input about what changes they'd like to see in the new iteration of USMCA. So we're hoping that we'll grow stronger and closer moving forward. And Fernando was mentioning, how are we developing this great ecosystem around the semiconductor industry as well? And a lot of it's because of the trust that has been generated from American companies operating in Mexico, and the fact that they feel very comfortable about sharing their IP and intellectual property with Mexican companies. They feel very comfortable about the quality of the products that are being produced there in Mexico. It's a great opportunity, as you were mentioning, on the entrepreneur side, to go down there, do design work in Mexico, train up the skilled workforce that exists down there in Mexico to handle some of the projects that are really being difficult to find qualified engineers and technical support here in the U.S. Another thing that we're seeing is on the U.S. side, the H-1B visa program. What's that going to look like next year? It's hard to believe we're already in December, and so it's already next month. As far as what changes are going to come down for companies here that need the skill sets that we're not producing here at the university levels, right? Not enough students are studying these types of engineering and technology. Going back to Michael's question about remote work opportunities, there's a lot of remote work opportunities out there in the world as supply chain needs have been impacted by a lot of the changes in the U.S. government outlook. So I think There's a lot of hope and there's a lot of opportunity out there. So we just have to figure out how to tap in. I'm more than happy to join in to the discussion online later on.
That sounds great. Well, Ben and Fernando, I want to say thank you to both of you guys. It is an interesting time, right? As we said at the very beginning, there is a lot of change that's going on with a lot of change that's happening with regards to trade winds and all that sort of stuff, and lots of opportunity, especially with our neighbors between Texas and Mexico. And it was great to see from across the world. Like I said, even in our studio audience from Korea to Germany and then into Mexico. And I think we might even had an Argentinian in there as well. So we're going to go ahead and bring today's webinar to a close. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Fernando, for your insight. I really greatly appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone, for the time.
Yeah, no, yeah, looking forward to catching up with you this next week, Fernando.
See you next week for sure, yes.
And if there's other individuals that would like to follow up, organizations as well, Fernando and I will be setting up some special appointments for that time. Let us know. Ben, as well, thank you for your insights and the things you've done for this region over the last 3 decades. I really greatly appreciate it. Part of the follow-on, if you were in the studio audience today, especially, you can take advantage of this somewhat hidden URL, techbranch.com/connect. There's a way of getting involved in the community there directly. If you want to join the community discussion around today's topic, that's the place to do it. A lot of times, instead of having our speakers take a lot of individual emails, the thing that I think is really powerful is to direct the conversation there, and it enriches the interaction that happens, and you can join the community for free there. With that, I'll go ahead and bring this to a close. Thank you for your time today, and let's go change the world to the better together. Now, y'all take good care. We'll see each other again soon.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
All right, take care. And for anyone in the audience as well, if you have questions for me, WhatsApp or something like that, let me know. And Ben, thanks again. I definitely need to follow up with you because I'll be in Williamson County this next week. And yeah, look forward to catching up with you again soon. And for the studio audience, definitely hit us up online. Look forward to it. All right, y'all take care.